Hello, welcome to a fairly short update. I want to talk a couple of things. One about the situation in Britain, and one about, of course, America. About 6 weeks ago, one of my contacts, sounds very cloak and daggerish, but somebody who passes information to me from time to time, said that we might have to expect some electric power cuts in Britain as part of the good guys, for want of a better word, the good guys' operations in the United Kingdom. And the person said to me that you might experience the electric pumps that pump drinking water to actually go off for a while. And this person said to me, it might not be a bad idea to fill your bath with water, and you can sort of flush your lavatory and have drinking water. I said, well, I've got bottles of drinking water for emergencies, but filling the bath is quite a good idea. And I then said, do you think we'll get much of this in the United Kingdom? And the reply was, well, probably not a lot, but there may be something, and it's always best to be safe. And the other, this other person had said to me, the usual story about 2 weeks worth of food and tinned food, and if you've got pets, make sure you've got dog food or cat food, and the usual safety side of it. Now, I get the local newspaper and I get the national newspaper because I like to see what lies are being told, and I like to see how the deep state is expressing itself. And I've lived through one of the worst winters this country's ever saw, which is 1963. I don't remember, I wasn't around for the earlier winters, but the 1963 winter, and you can go and look on YouTube and some pretty exciting pictures, was really, really difficult. And where I lived in Brighton, like many places, it was actually cut off, and they had to bring food in by helicopter, medicines and that by helicopter, and then they got the rail line open and the trains came in. So I have lived through that. And I also remember in about 2017-18, we had what they call the beast from the east, which is this big Siberian snowstorm. And many parts of Britain had that. I'm going to read what it says in the newspaper. Bear in mind, when I started this off by saying to you that someone from intelligence who has been consistently accurate with me said there was a possibility that as part of the good guys operations, you could lose the pumps supplying drinking water, and there'll be a few power outages. Let me read you this. This is just to show you. This is the Daily Telegraph newspaper. I know people will say I've made it up. You know what some people are like. I'm sorry, I'm not even going to show you the front because you're just going to have to believe me. This says blackouts warning. We prefer to use the word power outages, but in Great Britain, they tend to use these words. Blackouts warning. Big freeze hits Britain. Here's the words. Freezing temperatures and snowfall could lead to blackouts, cuts to your water, your gas, and mobile phone coverage in parts of the country this week. Now, I have never, ever in my experience, and we've had a few winters here, where we've had loss of electricity, loss of phone, loss of your gas, and loss of water. Now, if you're in Scotland or some parts of the rural country, then snow can lie on the cables, the pylons, and that can bring down a cable, and you can get several thousand houses without power. You can get ice and frost, I suppose, over a cell mast, a cell tower, phone tower, and that can disrupt it. But I have never, ever remember being warned to expect my drinking water to turn off, the gas that I cook with to turn off, and the electricity I use for heating and lights to turn off altogether. I think that is the deep state anticipating the good guys are going to start some action in Britain, and let's blame it on the weather. We're going to get 2 foot, 3 foot of snow, and then we'll blame that on that. So that for me is significant, and I wanted to bring that to your attention. I posted about the the studio with Biden coming apart, and everybody sort of said, no, that's a secret door. I know it's a secret door. That's why I put the joke on afterwards of Trump opening the secret door. But the real joke here is that it's in Castle Rock Studios, and everything that he's doing and filming is in Castle Rock. So when we've got that crack of the door, you know, that for me was great, because it was like, oh look, the set is coming apart. But everyone was very literal about that. Oh no, that's a secret door. He said, no, it's a secret door. Did you go back and see a little while later I put the joke on of Trump opening the door and doing his dance? You know, I'm not that unaware of what's happening. Now, we remember with President Trump, he would go around the world almost, and he would meet people, and he would have huge rallies, and he wasn't too frightened about talking to people. And so that was part of his world. We know with Biden, that's a completely different kettle of fish. Biden really can't go around on Air Force One, and he can't go around on Marine One. And so what they've done is they've purchased or taken from one of their pals a jet airplane, and they've painted it to look like Air Force Two. It's not Air Force One, it looks like Air Force Two. I tell you, it's not the same airplane. It's been literally, it's a commercial liner that's been painted to look like it, because the military won't let him use it. Now that's just incredibly surprising, but that's the truth. And here's the evidence for that, a little bit obscurely, but here it goes, is that Biden can't move around the United States because, first of all, the military won't salute him. Secondly, he's not getting anything like the protection that Trump had. And so what is he doing? He's going to do what you can do in a studio really well. So once a week, there's going to be Biden in the Oval Office, which is, of course, this television set, making phone calls to citizens of the United States, and it's going to be recorded. So it's a pre-record. So they've got loads of people all lined up ready, and it'll be fantastic for unemployed Hollywood actors with this lockdown, and they're not really making films any moment. And it'd be wonderful for all those Hollywood actors to be told, here's a script, you can be one of these just by chance random person that Biden's going to call, and you go, oh, it's the president on the phone, and oh yes, I lost my job, and all this, that, and the other, and then Biden can do his bit. But you have to tell everyone that you didn't know it was happening, that you haven't had the script beforehand, you haven't had weeks of notice, and you've not been practicing for it, and you're not an actor. You are a daycare worker, or you work in a production line, or you do this or you do that. But don't tell them you're an actor, you're an out-of-work actor. So that's what he's going to do. He's going to sit in a studio, make phone calls. You'll hear both ends of the conversation. You may even be given a fake photograph of the person they're speaking to. And this is how he wishes to communicate, just as he did in the cellar or the bunker or wherever he was hiding under a house during the campaign. So he's not going to go out and meet the American people. He's going to sit in a studio making telephone calls to out-of-work actors from Hollywood who are going to pretend, like they did in 9/11, that they saw something, and of course they didn't. And that's shocking but interesting. All right, so big question about America is, when's something going to happen? Well, I've had a number of interesting conversations with a number of interesting people, and it's becoming apparent, and I didn't pick this up, I'm a bit quite open about it, I didn't pick it up, but I'm picking it up now, that President Trump doesn't want the history books in 20 years, 50 years, 100 years, 500 years. He doesn't want the history books to have him down as the president that staged a military coup to remove a democratic elected president. The military don't want to be remembered as the military that overturned a government militarily. Now, the situation in Burma, Myanmar, was an interesting dry run, in the sense that the good guys were looking to see how the world viewed a military takeover. And the feedback coming from that is that it doesn't go down so well. Right, there are 3 or 4 court cases, and there's one coming up in the next week, which I've got a ton of good evidence that the Trump team have got. Sidney Powell, and several others, Lynn Wood, and a few others have got. And there was that wonderful 2-hour presentation which has gone the rounds, and I put it on my website. And that's actually admissible court evidence. That's actually evidence in court. And we know that one district judge or circuit judge has said that Dominion machines are fraudulent, and that's allowed them to push on further. And what I'm picking up is the United States military are not happy in taking out Biden or Clinton or anybody else unless they've got something from some court or other. So they will turn around and say, look, we weren't staging a coup, we were staging something to save the republic, and we were acting on the court's actions. Because in a so-called free democracy, the court system is the one that's independent and makes the decisions which ultimately govern the whole law or rule of a country. I know it's slightly different. In America, you have the Constitution, and what courts do is they will judge actions against the Constitution. They won't say, is the Constitution right? They'll look at something and say, does that follow the Constitution? And so much easier for the military or Trump or anybody else to say, I did what I did because these courts clearly said there was something that was totally corrupt, and we had to act on it. Now, it doesn't mean it's got to go all the way to SCOTUS, to the Supreme Court. It doesn't mean that. What it means is there has to be something concrete at a courtroom level, that even if that is prevented and stopped by a higher court, then the good guys can say, this is what this court said. It was prevented from being developed. So therefore, what they said must have been true because higher forces are holding it back. Therefore, we will act to protect what this court has said. Now, if it does go to SCOTUS, there are enough justices there to give Chief Justice Roberts a run for his money. And just as the head of Amazon took early retirement, early leave, so other people can. So I do think, and I do believe, and I do know that the good guys have been, arresting is quite a strong word, but they have been engaging with a number of these key players, senators, congressmen, and some have been arrested. And that's one game that's being played. But the top game, the man who was supposed to be elected as president, the woman who was supposed to be elected as vice president, they're not going to be removed until somebody in the court can do something enough that gives comfort to others who absolutely determined do not want the history books for the rest of the life of America, and hopefully that'll be thousands of years, to ever say that this was the time that the military overthrew the republic. You know, that's a big thing. If you swear an allegiance to the republic, Constitution, then that's a very heavy thing. And so I believe, from the conversations I've had, that's what they're going to wait for. Now that's happening. As I say, this big court case is coming up in the next few days, and that'll be very interesting. Does that mean that Biden's going to be in for months and months? No, I don't believe so at all. I think it's a very short period. People call it the clown show. I don't like that word again, because clowns are supposed to be happy and funny, and I know most children that see clowns actually sometimes have trauma. Some like them, but to me this isn't a clown show. This is a dreadful travesty of life. This is I can't think of much worse in terms of politics and the running of a country. It is the most awful, dreadful thing, and I wish it would end tomorrow, but that's not going to happen. And I understand, I don't necessarily fully agree, but I understand with those people who are making the decisions that they are very, very fearful of how history will judge them. And so they do believe, and I think I can see the green shoots of recovery coming, that in these courts at the lower district level and a little bit higher, they are now finding in the favour of democracy. They are now saying that, yeah, these Dominion machines are actually designed to be fraudulent, and we're waiting for a court to see, you know, this huge presentation and hear others and say, yeah, there's a serious issue here. And then it actually frankly doesn't matter whether they get blocked, because I think the good guys can then say, we have the green light, the flare gun's been fired, whatever you want. But it doesn't stop the good guys arresting the lower ranked people, and they have been, and others have been spoken to and dealt with to come back at a later date. There's a lot taking place, and then I go back to the beginning where I talked about Britain. You know, that is for me an indicator that the bad guys are aware that the federation, and it's nothing to do with outer space, the federation of good guys that exist in many countries who are anti-satanic are turning their attention now to Britain. And that's very handy for them to talk about a bit of bad weather. You know, that much of snow is going to mean that you're going to have no gas to cook on, no electricity to light or cook on, no drinking water because the pumps are going to go out. Oh, and by the way, your mobile phones, your cell phones are going to go off as well. It's a real handy excuse, isn't it? It's so staged, managed. It's like Biden being in his office, making a call to a guy who, you know, works in an auto repair shop, but really, you know, worked for Hollywood but doesn't have a job anymore. It's all so stage managed. We see through it. I honestly think that these people who are pulling these strings must think we're all totally stupid. They must think that we're brain dead. They must do. They're treating citizens across the world as if we're all stupid. But then that's what they do, isn't it? Because they don't value us. They just say, well, they're just robots. That's their vision. They do what we tell them to do. Don't ask questions, just do it. Remember my thing? You know, all you need to know. So all you need to know is this. And I think people see right through it. I've got a much higher regard for the people on this planet than these bad guys. And I think people see it and they're waiting. And all I'm saying to you is that I believe truth will be evil, but I think that from a practical procedural action is going to require something coming through. And that's why people like General Flynn, you know, are not going to come out and say to you, oh yes, the military are in control. They can't do that. They just can't, because they, you know, they are, in Great Britain we call it the Secrets Act, and I think they call it the National something or other Act in America. So, you know, don't expect people who are serving officers or very close to the actions, don't expect them to come and tell you, oh yes, the military are in control, we're doing this, that and the other. You can't do that. What they can do is try and help you out with little clues. And I did the Doug Billings show, and I'm sure many of you have seen that. We talked about that. So, you know, don't focus on one-liners. Look at the wider picture. You know, nobody can run a country like Biden supposedly running it when you're not running it. It can't go on. It's like an old jalopy with bits falling off it. I don't mean America. I don't mean that, but I mean his show, his road show is literally bits dropping off it. You know, it's like the car that's gone over the spike strips. You know, at what point will it be down on its rims and the sparks coming out? And that's really how we view it. So I don't view it with relish. I don't view this with glee or fun. I'm deeply saddened and upset by what I see. But I want that jalopy to be down on its rims. I want the sparks coming out, and I want it skidding off to the side of the road. And that's what we all want. We just have to be patient. So focus on the United Kingdom now. Let's see. As I say, I've been through a number of harsh winters, and nobody ever told me I was going to have no drinking water or no gas to cook on. And so somebody in the bad side, I think, has a clue that somebody in the good side is now turning their attention to Britain. And you may not know, but some of the Dominion stuff, we talked about Frankfurt and Spain and obviously China, but Canada, something in Britain as well. There was a connection in Britain, and I think that's what's taking the interest. All right, so it's just lovely to catch up with everyone and speak to you soon. Bye bye.